It is no secret that Canadians are struggling. Our GDP is falling. We are entering recessionary period. Productivity is unbelievably low right now, and the CBC just did a video explaining some of the things that are happening, how our productivity is low, but what they didn't do is explain why. They left out a lot of information about how Trudeau and liberal government policies are absolutely punishing and crushing Canadians right now, leading to us being unproductive and uncompetitive globally. So let's dive into their video, see if we can add a little bit more context about what they're talking about, and see what's going on with Canada and why are we struggling so much.
Canada has a productivity problem, and the Bank of Canada says it's urgent.
You know those signs that say, in an emergency, break the glass? Well, it's time to break the glass.
That's Carolyn Rogers, the Senior Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada. And yeah, she says things are bad. In terms of productivity, over the last few decades, the Canadian economy went from being about 88% as productive as the United States down to just 71% in 2022. We're now behind almost every.
What started to skyrocket in 2022? Was it government spending on public sector jobs? I don't know.
Other G7 country. And yet, we lead the G7 when it comes to having the most educated workforce, and we work more hours. So what's going on?
We have a highly educated workforce, but a lot of people who are not willing to get into the more productive roles that we're looking for. We have a lot of people looking for the white collar jobs. You know, they get into bachelor's of arts degrees and they expect, oh, I'll get into some corporate job, but there's just not enough productive corporate jobs going on. We need way more trades.
When economists talk about productivity, we're talking about how much a person contributes to the economy for every hour worked. For example, in the time a Canadian worker produces $1's worth of goods or services, a worker in France has produced $1.20. In the US,
guys, the French, we're gonna let the French beat us on productivity. They take 6 naps a day. They're basically smoking 24/7. They don't get any work done, and they're beating us on productivity. We can't have that, guys. Can't have that.
It's $1.30. It's important to know because it tells us how efficiently a country is using its workforce. Do people have high skill, high paying jobs that produce great output? Are they well supported? Do they have the right training, the right tools? Are they set up to succeed? No needless regulatory red tape holding businesses back.
No needless regulatory red tape.
All of these things help make a country more productive.
An economy with strong productivity can have faster growth, more jobs, and higher wages with less risk of inflation.
But the Bank of Canada gives 3 big reasons this country is struggling to keep up.
The first is labor composition, or the skills workers bring to the job.
The more skills you have, the more value you bring to the table. And this country imports a lot of skill. Canada now has
This country imports a lot of people. Skill?
one of the highest rates of immigration in the world. More than 1 million people came here last year alone, many of them with advanced
In the world, guys.
degrees. Except
Too often, new Canadians are working in jobs that don't take advantage of the skills they already possess, and too often these people wind up stuck in low-wage, low-productivity jobs.
So imagine the trained engineer delivering food, the trained teacher hauling trash, or the trained scientist
To be fair, a lot of the trained teachers don't speak English, and I don't know if they should be teaching the kids anyways.
working retail. These aren't bad jobs, but these are bad matches. And those skills they have, Canada desperately needs. Take healthcare. According to Stats Canada, only 36% of foreign-trained nurses actually worked in nursing in 2021, compared to 87% of people who trained as nurses in Canada.
Okay, well, I mean, I would hope that if you're a trained Canadian nurse, you've gotten into nursing. But that being said, if we do have 36% of foreign trained nurses ready to be there, ready to help out in our healthcare system, that is an area that is something we do need help with. We need labor supply. So if there is a way to expedite that, I mean, I'm just becoming pretty anti-immigration, because part of the reason our healthcare system is struggling so much is we keep bringing over older immigrants who go straight into the emergency care and the hospitals and all these things, but then also younger immigrants who bring over their 60 plus year old parents who go straight into the healthcare system as well. So maybe if we got less growth, the healthcare system wouldn't be stressed as much, even with our aging population. So I think there's ways for us to navigate through less immigration.
And about a quarter of all immigrants with foreign degrees ended up working in Canadian jobs that only required a high school diploma or less.
Canada's productivity, and in fact our standard of living, will depend importantly on how we leverage and develop the skills of these new workers. But if I had to pick the biggest concern in this area, I'd say it's competition.
We know Canada has a competition problem. Just a few months ago, the Competition Bureau put out a report saying the level of competition in Canada has been dropping steadily over the past 2 decades. And just intuitively, when you think about what a truly competitive landscape looks like, is that really what you have?
Okay, so, I mean, looking at all of those labels there's not a Canadian watching this video right now who doesn't know every single one of those companies. I mean, when it comes to banking, you can just say, oh, the big five. Everybody knows who they are. And he did say 20 years, so I will say we can't blame this exclusively on Trudeau. However, we kind of can, because he has been particularly bad when it comes to government corruption levels when we are talking anti-competition. So many American companies and other global companies have tried to come into Canada just to get them shut down through government lobbying. And then the competition, like, that hurts Canadians. And the amount of corruption we're seeing when it comes to the current government that's there, it's so nuts, because what's happening is you're getting these people who are like, oh yeah, we're actually the people who look after the competition, and then they're taking money from, all of these companies that are stopping them. We do have a lot of monopolies in Canada who just seem to be controlling everything, and that's something we need to get better at. It's not exclusively Trudeau, because it's been happening for a while, but he is certainly making it worse, and it's a huge issue that needs to be fixed.
With your phone plan, your bank, your grocery store, or the airline you choose.
In Canada, there are sectors in our economy where companies face limited levels of competition, whether from new entrants or from firms from outside the country, or even firms from other provinces.
Telecom and banking are pretty bad ones. Telecom, we have some of the highest phone bills in the world globally, because we just have like 3 options. And then, same with banking as well. But like telecom is just one of the ones that you see, and it's like, it's such a shame. Our bills should not be anywhere near they are. $100 a month for a cell phone bill, more.
Competition can be a big driver of productivity. It applies pressure to innovate, to differentiate, to find efficiencies. But a lack of competition can lead to what the Bank of Canada has identified as a third major problem.
When you compare Canada's recent productivity record with that of other countries, what really sticks out is how much we lag on investment in machinery and equipment, and importantly, on intellectual property.
Okay, so
big thing being, the Trudeau government is just growing these public sector nonsense jobs that shouldn't even exist. And then they're going, oh, we don't have enough money to give it to these other businesses. But not only that, their politics are stopping them from investing in new machinery that we need, especially when it comes to our resource sector. The amount of money that they could be giving to these companies to help them buy new machinery, even more efficient, combustion engine machinery, stuff like that. It's like they go, oh no, we want green alternatives, we want this, and the companies are going, we can't use green alternatives, and they're like, all right, well then pay for it yourself, and we're going to also charge you the carbon tax. So then it punishes private companies who can't get competitive, because now they have way more expenditures, plus they're paying carbon tax, and they're getting no government help when it comes, like, these are private companies. And I'm like pretty anti-government spending, but if we're going to be spending all this stupid money on public sector jobs, may as well be giving some of it to the private sector.
So let's break that down. The first part of this, the machinery and equipment, is about investing in the tools workers need to be as productive as possible. If you're in manufacturing, how smooth is the production line? If you're in construction, do you have excavators or shovels?
And they won't let Canadian companies, get extra grants and things for these types of equipment that he's listing there, because it's bad for the environment.
If you're in retail, do you have the tech to speed things up? According to a report by the Fraser Institute, Canada's investment in these tools is dropping from about $18,000 per worker in 2014 to less than $15,000 in 2021 when adjusted for inflation. Meanwhile, US companies were investing nearly $27,000 per worker.
Which country has no carbon tax, so they're buying equipment that's not being, double marked up when it comes to taxes?
AI is another example, potentially a big productivity booster, right? But this report shows by 2021, only 3.7% of Canadian firms were using AI at work. Meanwhile, take a country like Denmark. The study found so far they've had double the rate of adoption. The other problematic side to Canada's investment picture, according to the Bank of Canada, is all about innovation. The Deputy Governor mentioned intellectual property. So think about R&D. According to Stats Canada, private sector spending on research and development grew only 0.5% in 2022. And in terms of companies that actually include R&D in their business strategy, it's fewer than 2%.
That's because Trudeau is punishing Canadians when it comes to that level of investment and innovation. Because I don't know if you guys heard recently, there was that crazy story of the Edison Motors. They built the very first semi-truck in BC that's been built in decades. Not only that, it was 100% electric. They went through the process of applying for a grant. And then in that process, they basically said, hey, if you want to get this grant money, you have to work through the company that gives the grants, pay them to tell you how to get the grant, and then they'll approve your grant. And then so it's like, okay, so I have to pay them. Then I have to get the grant. Then they take a percentage of the grant, and they're the ones who are approving it. Like the level of corruption on that Edison Motors story was nuts. We can talk about that in another video, but it's just like that's how corrupt the current Liberal government is. It's like, oh yeah, what are you gonna do for us if you want this money on this innovation? And the people in charge of it are just crazy.
Compare that to R&D spending in other G7 countries. Canada ranks near the
Beat by France again.
bottom. So while global competitors find new ways to increase output and optimize processes, Canada falls behind. The big picture isn't hopeless, however. These problems are fixable, but the in case of emergency break glass solutions that the Bank of Canada has in mind likely lie as much with private enterprise as they do with government. Reducing red tape, encouraging competition, matching skills to jobs, creating the right conditions for Canada's workforce to hit peak productivity.
So technically what he's saying is true, but when you're talking about removing red tape, that's not on the private sector. The only thing that you could maybe say is, okay, some of the immigration that comes over, how can we find ways for them to get into the private sector that makes a bit more sense? But that being said, it's way more government red tape that needs to be removed. I will say, again, like I mentioned earlier on, the private companies are blocking a lot of the competition through government means. It's all through policy and lobbying. So it's like they're blocking a lot of it. We do need more competition. We do need more innovation. But why would the companies be motivated to innovate when they're not going to get rewarded for it? They might even get punished. So anyways, guys, I'm a real estate agent in London, Ontario. Reach out to me in the link below if you want to work with me or anybody in my network all across Canada. That's it for today's video. Have a great rest of your day.